What if I told you some of the richest, most famous people in the world blew it all, not on bad business deals or wild parties, but at the gambling table? That's right, millions gone with the flip of a card or the spin of a wheel. Can you imagine earning a fortune, only to watch it vanish in a haze of chips and dice? Stay tuned, because some names on this list will leave you speechless. Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney wasn't just a Hollywood legend, he was the golden boy, pulling in more money than most studios could count. But the real drama didn't happen on screen. It happened under the neon lights of racetracks, casinos, and backroom poker games where Rooney turned high earnings into heartbreak. He had it all: fame, fortune, and the kind of energy that made people think he'd never lose. But gambling doesn't care about your legacy. Rooney would stroll into a casino with a studio-sized paycheck, only to walk out holding little more than empty promises. Here's where it gets wild. Rooney's addiction was so notorious, he caught the attention of the mafia. Yes, the real deal. The man who played wholesome Andy Hardy had organized crime breathing down his neck, all because of mountains of unpaid debts. Studios intervened, but even they couldn't save him from himself. Rooney's luck at the tables was as bad as his taste in bets. Horses, cards, dice, he tried them all and lost at every turn. As his debts grew, Rooney took whatever acting jobs he could get, sliding from Hollywood A-lister to B-movie survivor just to cover what he owed. By the end, the kid who could have been worth millions died with next to nothing, proof that not even a giant star is safe when gambling takes control. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn looked like he could handle anything: duels, sword fights, and impossible escapes. But when it came to gambling, the swashbuckler's greatest battles happened off camera. Flynn's addiction started innocently, a few bets with friends here and there, but soon he was betting on anything that moved. Poker games, horse races, dice with the crew between takes, if it had odds. Flynn was in. His gambling wasn't just expensive, it was destructive. Flynn's studio paychecks, sometimes massive, would disappear almost instantly in high-stakes poker games hidden in smoky Hollywood backrooms. He'd win big one night, then lose twice as much the next. What's worse, the stakes weren't just money, they were reputation and relationships too. Flynn's wild nights forced studios to intervene, paying off his debts just to keep the star out of serious trouble. But every bailout was just another excuse to bet bigger. Flynn would vanish for days, missing filming schedules, leaving directors to shoot around his absence. His losses grew, friendships crumbled, and marriages shattered under the weight of his addiction. By the time he died at just 50, Flynn was nearly penniless, his fortune scattered across poker tables and racetracks. Hollywood's original action hero learned the hard way. You can dodge sword swings and bullets, but you can't outrun the odds forever. George Raft. If you picture a Hollywood gangster, you're probably picturing George Raft. Slick hair, sharp suit, eyes that said trouble. But Raft didn't just act like a tough guy, he gambled like one, and the consequences were as real as they get. This was a man who went from earning top dollar in classics like Scarface to hustling for scraps, all thanks to a gambling habit that spiraled out of control. Raft rolled into Vegas or Atlantic City with the confidence of a king, but confidence doesn't guarantee luck. He'd blow thousands on single spins of the wheel, betting with both movie money and mobsters who didn't believe in second chances. The worst part? Raft cultivated real relationships with dangerous people, blurring the lines between his on-screen roles and real-life risks. Even as his career started to slip, Raft never dialed back his bets. Studios and casinos kept giving him credit, knowing he'd lose it all back anyway. He was what gamblers call a whale, but unlike the smart ones, Raft never walked away a winner. By the 1950s, he was taking any acting job he could get just to keep feeding his habit. George Raft is proof that living like a high roller can leave you flat broke, and when your luck finally runs out, there's nobody left to bail you out. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra didn't just sing about luck, he tried to live it, and for a while, it looked like he'd cracked the code. The chairman of the board had everything: money, fame, and more credit in Vegas than most banks. But for Sinatra, the line between legend and loser was as thin as a poker chip. While the world swooned to "my way," Sinatra was blowing fortunes on craps, cards, and anything else with a little risk and a lot of flash. Sinatra's gambling wasn't a secret. In fact, it was part of his Rat Pack mystique. Las Vegas casinos welcomed him with open arms and unlimited tabs, knowing he'd keep the money flowing right back into their pockets. Some nights he'd perform on stage, only to gamble away every dime he'd just earned before sunrise. He wasn't alone either. His pals Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. made it a team effort, turning high-stakes losses into late-night stories. But behind the glitz, the bills were piling up. Sinatra lost so much money, he had to take extra gigs just to pay off debts to both casinos and some very impatient loan sharks. The stress showed in his marriages, his friendships, and his reputation. For every lucky break, there were twice as many crushing losses. The man who conquered music and movies never conquered the tables. Sinatra is living proof that even when you have everything, the house still wins. Dean Martin, cool, unbothered, the master of suave, Dean Martin, was the kind of guy who made it look easy, from the songs to the comedy to the martinis. But step onto the casino floor, and Martin's smooth act turned into a slow-motion car wreck. He lost millions gambling, usually with a joke and a shrug, as if losing everything was just part of his act. But make no mistake, behind that relaxed grin, the losses cut deep. Dean Martin's gambling style was as casual as his public persona. He'd walk into a Vegas casino, crack a joke, order a drink, and proceed to lose mountains of cash at the craps table. The kicker? He was terrible at it. Martin bet big on bad odds and treated losing as just another punchline. His friendship with Sinatra didn't help. The two would challenge each other, betting not just on games but on who could handle losing the most money. As his gambling addiction deepened, Martin's finances took hit after hit. He made millions from records, television, and film, but it seemed like he was always borrowing money to cover another round of losses. Even his manager tried to hide money from him, knowing Martin would gamble it away the moment he could. The king of cool ended up a cautionary tale. Turns out, even the smoothest operator can get burned when the cards don't fall your way. Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. could do it all: sing, dance, act, and bring a room to its feet with one snap. But for all his talent, there was one stage he never managed to conquer: the casino floor. As the only black member of the Rat Pack, Sammy always felt the pressure to keep up with his famous friends, especially when it came to gambling. If Sinatra and Dean Martin were dropping thousands, Sammy was right there, matching them chip for chip, even when he couldn't afford it. His gambling wasn't about fun or thrill, it was about proving he belonged. He'd earn thousands performing at the Copa Room, then lose it all in a matter of hours at the blackjack tables. Poker, roulette, sports, Sammy played every game with the same energy he brought to the spotlight, but the results were nothing to dance about. He treated gambling as entertainment, but the stakes were heartbreakingly real. The sad part? Sammy was once among the world's highest-paid entertainers, but he still ended up scrambling for gigs just to pay off debts. He'd take any job, big or small, to keep the wolves at bay. His debts to casinos, loan sharks, and even the IRS stacked up until they became overwhelming. When he passed, he left behind a pile of bills for his family. Sammy Davis Jr. proved you can be the star of every show and still lose your shirt when the cards turn cold. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner was the definition of old Hollywood glamour, striking, magnetic, and with a wild streak that never quit. She was famous for living on her own terms, and that included how she gambled. Ava didn't see the casino as a place to get rich. She saw it as a playground for risk and rebellion. She'd cash a movie paycheck and march straight to the tables, eager for the rush that came with every spin and deal. But the thrill quickly spiraled into disaster. Gardner's gambling wasn't just reckless, it was relentless. She'd lose huge sums in one sitting, betting bigger as her luck soured. It was all or nothing, and most times, it ended up being nothing. The more she lost, the more desperate her bets became, and the cycle just kept spinning. Ava's finances took hit after hit, and the lifestyle that once looked effortless became an exhausting chase for the next win. She'd take roles in low-budget European films just to keep the casino habit going, sacrificing her reputation for another chance at a big score. Her legendary beauty and talent couldn't save her from the pull of the tables. In the end, Gardner's life became a cautionary tale. No amount of style or charm can beat the cold odds of addiction. Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth was America's dream girl, the red-haired goddess who lit up the silver screen and danced her way into Hollywood history. But behind the glamorous image was a woman who couldn't walk away from a bet, no matter how high the stakes or how bad the odds. Rita's gambling habit started small, just a few horse races and casual bets, but soon it became the one role she couldn't escape. She was earning millions at her peak, but as fast as the money came in, it disappeared at the casino. Cards, dice, sports betting, Rita would gamble on anything, convinced her luck would turn. When life off-screen got tough, gambling became her escape, a mindless break from the pressures of stardom and heartbreak. The tragedy? The same star who could memorize every dance step and script never figured out how to play the odds. As she got older, her gambling only grew more desperate and expensive. With her career fading and her health declining, Rita's losses became more frequent, and her financial problems piled up. In her later years, she struggled to pay basic bills, her millions lost to the casinos that never gave anything back. Rita Hayworth's story is a haunting reminder that no matter how bright the spotlight, it can't outshine the darkness of addiction. John Huston. John Huston was a Hollywood powerhouse, the director who gave us classics like The Maltese Falcon and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. But away from the film sets, Huston was chasing another kind of treasure, one that always slipped through his fingers: gambling winnings. He could manage million-dollar movie budgets with ease, but couldn't keep track of his own money when the racetrack or casino called his name. For Huston, gambling was less about the money and more about the rush. He craved the high stakes, betting amounts that could finance entire films. Win or lose, it was always about the thrill. But more often than not, he lost, and lost big. Huston's habit forced him to take jobs he didn't care about, directing films just to pay off debts. Some say he accepted projects he would have otherwise laughed at, all because he needed to get back to the betting tables. His addiction didn't just drain his wallet, it created chaos on set, with Huston vanishing between takes to check race results or place a bet. Crew and actors tiptoed around his moods, never sure if they'd get a focused director or a distracted gambler. In the end, Huston's legendary creativity couldn't save him from the gamble he never won. When the credits rolled, the director who brought so many stories to life was left with little more than regret and empty pockets. William Holden. William Holden was the classic Hollywood leading man, handsome, charismatic, and with an intensity that jumped off the screen. But behind the cool exterior was a man who craved risk, and for Holden, that meant gambling. What started as friendly games of poker or a few bets at the racetrack turned into a high-stakes addiction that rivaled any drama he played on film. Holden was known for his fierce competitive streak, both on and off set. When he gambled, he did it with the same focus and drive that won him Oscars. The problem? At the tables, his confidence worked against him. He chased every loss with bigger bets, always sure his luck would turn. Instead, the losses piled up. Holden's paychecks from blockbusters like Sunset Boulevard and The Bridge on the River Kwai didn't last long. Most of the money went straight into the hands of casinos and bookies. His addiction took a heavy toll. Holden accepted roles in movies he didn't care about just to fund his habit, diluting his once glittering reputation. Friends and colleagues watched as the man who once picked scripts carefully became desperate for cash. Personal relationships strained, family events missed, and time lost to endless nights at the tables. Holden's real tragedy played out away from the spotlight. In the end, Hollywood's golden boy proved that not even star power can outshine the cold reality of gambling addiction. Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum always played it cool. He was Hollywood's original rebel, with sleepy eyes and a smirk that suggested nothing could faze him. But if you followed him off set, you'd see the real chaos, a gambling habit that burned through millions with barely a blink. Mitchum bet on anything: cards, horses, sports, even random outcomes on set. If there was a wager to be made, Mitchum was all in. The real kicker? He treated massive losses like a parking ticket, just an inconvenience, not a disaster. Mitchum's devil-may-care attitude meant he kept pushing his luck, no matter how bad the odds. He'd leave the set of a major film, cash his check, and head straight for the nearest casino or racetrack. Sometimes he won big, but most times, the house got the last laugh. Studios kept advancing him money, knowing it would vanish by the weekend, but they counted on his reliability once the cameras rolled. His gambling didn't just drain his bank account, it chipped away at his legacy. The actor who gave unforgettable performances in classics like Night of the Hunter found himself taking roles he didn't even want, just to fund the next bet. Mitchum's story proves that even the smoothest operator can get caught in a losing streak, and no amount of cool can make up for cold, hard losses. Burt Lancaster. Burt Lancaster was the physical force of Hollywood, an ex-circus performer turned superstar, famous for tackling his own stunts and commanding the screen. But the real danger for Lancaster wasn't falling from a trapeze, it was falling for the rush of gambling. He brought the same intensity to the tables that he did to his movies, betting big and rarely knowing when to walk away. Lancaster's addiction grew out of pure competitiveness. He saw gambling as just another contest, a high-wire act with dollar bills on the line. Whether it was poker, sports, or roulette, Lancaster always believed he could win. That belief cost him dearly. He'd win a fortune one night and lose it all the next, unable to stop chasing the next thrill. Studios loved his box office draw but dreaded his unpredictable financial habits. After every major hit, Lancaster seemed to find new ways to blow his paycheck. The fallout was ugly. Lancaster ended up taking roles in films that didn't deserve his talent, just to cover debts. Friends worried, family members pleaded, but the grip of addiction was too tight. The man known for his strength and self-control off-screen was powerless in the face of a losing streak. In the end, Lancaster's story isn't just about risk. It's about how the biggest gamble can be with your own future. Kirk Douglas. When you think of Hollywood toughness, Kirk Douglas is usually the first name that comes to mind. He was the fighter, the survivor, the man who played Spartacus and made every scene crackle with energy. But not even the toughest guy in the room could beat the tables. Douglas's gambling addiction became a secret battle, one that cost him far more than he ever let on. Douglas approached every hand like it was a duel to the death. His ego, so useful on set, worked against him when he gambled. He doubled down on bad odds, convinced that one more bet would turn everything around. Instead, he dug himself deeper and deeper. He earned millions in his career but watched most of it slip away at the casino or the racetrack. The pride that drove him to the top of Hollywood also kept him from admitting when he'd lost. The impact went beyond his bank account. Douglas's gambling forced him to take on projects he wasn't passionate about, just for a quick paycheck. He even gambled on sports he barely understood, thinking confidence alone would carry him. Relationships strained, opportunities dried up, and Hollywood's warrior found himself fighting a battle he couldn't win. Kirk Douglas is proof that no matter how strong you are, addiction will always find a way to strike back. Tony Curtis. Tony Curtis was Hollywood's heartthrob, with the kind of looks and charm that seemed to guarantee success. But Curtis had a weakness, and it wasn't just for the spotlight, it was for the thrill of gambling. He started small, dabbling in horse races and poker games, but as his fame grew, so did his bets. Curtis treated every wager like a performance, sure his luck would match his charisma. But casinos and bookmakers didn't care about star power. Curtis gambled recklessly, convinced the next roll or hand would be the one to turn it all around. His charm worked wonders with fans, but not with the odds. Before long, Curtis was losing more than he could win. He'd get comped by casinos, who knew the money would flow right back into their pockets. As his debts grew, Curtis began accepting any acting job he could, even ones beneath his talent, just to cover his losses. The toll wasn't just financial, it seeped into his personal life, leading to strained relationships and missed opportunities. The once selective leading man found himself desperate for cash, trapped in a cycle he couldn't escape. In the end, Tony Curtis's story is a classic case of Hollywood glamour meeting cold reality. Turns out, you can't charm your way out of a losing streak. Peter Lawford. Peter Lawford was the English gentleman of Hollywood, dapper and cool, with connections that stretched from the Rat Pack to the Kennedys. But underneath that sophisticated veneer was a man desperately trying to keep up, a man who gambled with everything, including his reputation. Lawford's addiction was fueled by the company he kept. Surrounded by Sinatra, Martin, and Davis, he felt the pressure to bet big, even when his wallet couldn't handle it. Unlike his famous friends, Lawford didn't have endless cash to burn. He was soon borrowing from anyone willing to lend, digging himself into deeper and deeper holes. The casinos were happy to comp him, confident that whatever he won would be lost by morning. Lawford's gambling soon became less about the thrill and more about survival, chasing losses with the hope of one big win. As the debts piled up, Lawford's world began to unravel. His addiction cost him major acting roles and put a strain on his marriage to Patricia Kennedy, eventually ending his connection to one of America's most famous families. Old friends grew distant as Lawford's reputation for borrowing and losing followed him everywhere. The actor who once seemed to have it all ended up scrambling for small roles, just to keep up appearances. Lawford's story is a lesson in how fast luck can change, especially when you're betting against the odds. Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley is a Hall of Famer, an NBA legend, and a TV personality known for telling it like it is. But when it comes to gambling, even Barkley admits he's made more mistakes than he can count. Barkley's gambling wasn't a hidden secret. It was national news. He's spoken openly about losing over $10 million, sometimes more, chasing wins that never came. The man who dominated basketball courts couldn't find the same rhythm at the blackjack or roulette tables. It started as friendly competition, but the stakes got out of hand. Barkley would play for hours, sometimes days, always convinced the next hand was the one. Casinos loved him, not just for his fame, but for the sheer amount of money he dropped. Barkley treated gambling like an extension of the game, another way to feel the adrenaline. But the house always has the edge, and Barkley learned that the hard way. His losses were so huge that they made headlines. Barkley didn't shy away. He owned up, admitting on TV that gambling cost him more than he'd ever win back. Despite the fortune he made as a player and broadcaster, his bank account took serious hits over the years. Barkley's story is a modern warning. No matter how much you earn, the odds are always stacked against you. Wayne Rooney. Wayne Rooney isn't just a football superstar. He's one of the most recognized names in sports worldwide. But all the fame and record-breaking goals couldn't keep him away from the dangers of gambling. Rooney's addiction started quietly, in betting shops and online, but quickly turned into something headline-worthy. At the peak of his career, he was reportedly losing over £1 million in a single night. Rooney's competitive streak didn't stop on the pitch. He took the same never-give-up attitude to the tables and slots, always believing his luck would change. Instead, the losses mounted and the headlines grew. There were stories of Rooney sneaking away from team hotels for late-night casino trips, and even rumors of him betting during training camps. The sums he lost are staggering, but the impact went deeper. Gambling strained his relationships and added chaos to a career already under constant scrutiny. Despite earning more than most people could dream of, Rooney ended up chasing his losses and risking his reputation. His story is a lesson in how quickly the betting bug can bite, even for those who seem untouchable. For Rooney, no amount of goals could score him a win against the odds. Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is often called the greatest basketball player of all time, but for all his on-court heroics, there's another side to MJ, one with a passion for high-stakes gambling that bordered on obsession. Jordan's love of competition didn't end when he stepped off the court. Whether it was golf, poker, or casino games, he played to win, often betting amounts that would make most people dizzy. The numbers? Jordan has admitted to losing millions, and his wild gambling sprees have become the stuff of legend. There are tales of late-night poker games with fellow athletes, eye-popping casino visits, and even wagers during practice. It wasn't just about the money. Jordan thrived on the pressure, the chance to prove he could outplay anyone, anywhere. While Jordan never went broke thanks to his huge fortune, his gambling losses were real and often splashed across the headlines. He took criticism in stride, but it followed him for years, raising questions about what could have been if he'd just walked away from the tables. Jordan's story is proof that no matter how high you fly, there's always a risk when you bet against the house. Even the GOAT can't win every time. Shannon Elizabeth. Most people know Shannon Elizabeth as the breakout star from American Pie, but there was a time when she was better known at the poker table than on the big screen. Elizabeth made headlines as one of the top celebrity poker players, regularly competing in high-stakes tournaments and even earning serious prize money. For a while, it looked like she might be one of the rare few to beat the system. But as the stakes got higher, so did the risks. Elizabeth became hooked on the adrenaline, moving from tournament play to riskier games and sports betting. The wins became fewer, and the losses piled up fast. Stories of her gambling debts began to surface, and the money she'd made from both acting and poker started slipping through her fingers. Soon, the rush of the game gave way to financial headaches. She found herself struggling to pay back what she owed, taking smaller acting roles and endorsement deals just to keep up. The poker tables that once brought her fame became the stage for her financial downfall. Shannon Elizabeth's journey is a reminder. In gambling, one lucky streak can never guarantee a happy ending. TJ Cloutier. TJ Cloutier is a legend in the poker world, a Hall of Famer with millions in career winnings and enough tournament bracelets to fill a trophy case. But behind all the hardware, there's a hard truth. Cloutier lost nearly everything he earned, thanks to a lifelong gambling addiction that never let up. While he crushed it at the poker table, sports betting and casino games were his undoing. Cloutier's downfall is especially shocking because he knew the odds better than most, yet he couldn't resist the siren call of betting on football, craps, and anything else that looked like a quick win. Time and again, he'd win a fortune in a tournament, then lose it all on a single bad weekend. At his lowest, Cloutier was forced to sell his most prized poker bracelet just to pay the bills. His story became famous as a warning to poker pros and amateurs alike. Skill at the table means nothing if you can't control what happens when you leave it. Even legends are human, and Cloutier proved that no amount of expertise can outplay addiction. For TJ Cloutier, every win felt like a new beginning, until the losses took it all away. So, what did we learn from these stories of glitz, glamour, and gut-wrenching losses? No matter how rich, famous, or unstoppable you seem, nobody is immune to the lure and the ruin of gambling. Which celebrity's downfall shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments and join the conversation. And if you love diving into the untold side of celebrity life, hit subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories. Remember, sometimes the biggest gamble is thinking it can't happen to you.